Welcome to our presentation, Both Sides of the Story. We are a team from Denmark, from both Aarhus University and Copenhagen University. And this is a paper that's funded by a project from the Velux Foundation. My name is David Reimer, and I will be presenting the first half of this talk.
And my name is Bent Sortka, and I'm going to present the last part of the presentation. And alongside, to prepare this presentation, we had Stefan Ømke, and we had Emil Schmidt, and we had Ida Gran Andersen.
So in this paper, we focus on data on reading. And why reading? Well, reading is a very important life skill. And here we're looking at students, and I mean, in order for students to learn, they need to be able to read. And of course, there's also research showing that reading and reading ability is actually connected to later life outcomes. So reading is important, no question about that. And it's maybe also not a surprise that there are many organizations and of course states that invested quite a bit in measuring students sort of academic achievement in general, and reading in particular. One sort of assessment program that you probably all are aware of is the PISA program, the Program for International Student Assessment, that also has regular sort of special modules and tests to read, to measure reading ability. And of course, there are also at the national level many sort of tests. I mean, again, general tests of academic achievement in reading in particular. And Denmark is a country that actually has institutionalized tests, tests of reading ability in the past years. Although those tests have been controversially discussed in the past. And also, I mean, there are many reasons for that. And one reason is that, of course, potentially doing these tests might be it might be detrimental for student well-being. And another reason is just economical, because I mean, making these tests and doing it at schools, implementing them costs a lot of money. Another development that you're all aware of is what students regularly do these days. Students and everybody, I mean, we as adults, of course, as well, we read online, read on our mobile devices, on iPads and so forth. And these screens also have become part of the sort of the learning environment for students. Which means that a lot of data on reading is actually user-generated, or potentially user-generated, and potentially available for research. And this is where we come in our research project. We've been able to cooperate with a firm, a small firm, actually it comes from the town where we are located in Aarhus, that has a program called BookBites. And BookBites is just a reading app similar to, if you know Amazon Kindle, just for students. And I mean, what's interesting about BookBites is it in a way simulates, I don't know, the logic of some of those running or sports app that you're aware of. You get stars if you read more. And also interesting is that students have access to all books, so it's not limited that you only can take out a digital book if somebody else has not taken it out. So you can basically, all books that are available for everybody and all the time. I mean, it's actually really wide selection, and we have actually two of our researchers here have children, who are actually actively using this app. So we also saw that. So it's an app that generates user data on reading activity, and this is actually what we're looking at. So Denmark, as I said before, also has national tests. So we have actually two interesting data sources that we kind of want to compare. So this leads us to three overarching research questions. So again, we have those tests on reading ability, and what we would like to know is what can be learned from comparing results from the national tests on reading ability to data generated by the BookBites reading app. is there anything that can be learned from that, and what comes out of that? That's our first research question that we want to answer here. The second point relates to the nature of this user-generated data. The nature being, okay, students, or at least some students, use the app every day, or at least much more often than once a year. That's the frequency those tests are taken. So this is data that has much more of a longitudinal element, and we want to know if this longitudinal element can be used, or can we take advantage of this element to say something about also about reading progress, or progress in reading speed. But Bent will elaborate in a second. And then third, we come a little more in analytical, not just descriptive, where we want to know, whether reading speed progress, across an academic year, if reading speed progress can be predicted, and what can be learned in relation to enhancing student learning. So these are the three research questions, and now I will pass on to Bent, who will explain in more detail what we did.
I'm gonna go on by presenting the three data sources. First, we have register data, which is based on the social security numbers, and all citizens in Denmark has this. And in this register, we have information on the student's siblings, the parents' income, the parents' education. We have country of birth, gender, and lots of other things. Data source number 2 is the reading ability test, which David just explained. And this is a mandatory reading ability test. And it has 3 parts, which is testing, which is language comprehension, decoding, and reading comprehension. The third data source is the app-generated data. Every time the student reads in the Book Bytes app, and every time a student turns a page, there's data recorded. And this data has information on the title of the book, the author, how many pages in the book, how many seconds the student used reading the page, how many words on the page, the difficulty on the words, and lots of other information. This and the reading ability test can be linked through the social security number to the register data, which means that we have a quite enormous data set on these 3 data sources. However, while the register data and the reading ability test data is quite easy to use in analysis, this data from the reading app is quite messy. So before we could use it, we had to do a quite intensive data preparation. What we did was try to exclude unrealistic page turns. So we excluded pages that was read faster than 10 seconds or slower than 10 minutes. Looking at the data, we found out that many students were just flipping pages for one reason or the other. And it seemed that other times students were spending like 20-30 minutes on one page, which isn't realistic page turn speed. And we also excluded other pages which were read very fast or very slow. We ended up creating reading sessions. And a session is if a student reads 5 or more pages in a row, it comprises into a session. And after including all these data, we had a sample of 11,000 students who has had over 200,000 reading sessions. And now the data was ready for analysis. So as for the results, our first research question was how we could compare the reading test ability scores to the app-generated measures of reading speed. And here we see 3 graphs from 3rd grade, 5th grade, and 7th grade. And the correlation quotient is around 0.5, and it seems there's some correlation between the national test score and the reading speed measured from the reading app, especially in the 5th grade where we have the most data. What we also did in this analysis was to look at certain characteristics of the students. For example, in this table, we were looking at the educational level of the parents. This is fifth grade data, and the educational level is categorized from 1 to 7, 1 meaning if the parents only finished primary school, and 7 means if one of the parents finished higher education. And as you can see, there is some indication of a higher correlation quotient if the student's parents has a higher education. We're not quite sure how to interpret this result. It could be a matter of students of higher educated parents are reading in a more stable speed, so the correlation quotient will go up, or it could be a matter of the reading ability test is being unfair to students of parents with low education. We would, if you have any suggestions how to interpret the result, we will be very glad to hear them after the presentation. As for question 2, whether it was possible to monitor reading speed progress, we see all these lines, and if we exclude lines for grade 7, 8, and 9 and grade 0 and 1, we see there is some indication that we are able to monitor reading speed progress throughout the school year. However, we need quite substantive amount of data to be able to do that. As for question 3, we included all possible variables from the register data, from the reading ability data, and from the reading app generated data. And then we tested various models, also machine learning models, but we ended up with 2 linear models, the ridge regression and the linear regression, which both showed quite good fits, at least as we know in the social sciences. We excluded variables one by one, ending up with 5-6 variables that can explain reading speed progress. I'm not going to explain all the coefficient, but it seems that there is information to learn and to inform both policy and practice from these coefficients. For example, the variable called last reading speed class norm indicates if you read faster or slower than the average in the class, and it seems that if you read faster than the peers in the class, it has a positive relation to the predicting of reading speed progress. On the other hand, if your reading ability test score is high, it has a negative relation to predicting reading speed progress. To conclude, it seems that the app generated data to some extent correlates with the reading test scores. 2, it seems that the app generated data to some extent can be used for monitoring reading speed progress. However, it takes lots of data. And 3rd, it seems that the data from this BookBite app has some potential in predicting reading speed progress and thus informing both policy and practice. We have some ideas for next steps to build on this data set. One is to add some observational data to see how and when and where they actually read these students. Second is to have survey data from both teacher and students on how they read, what they read, the titles they read, how much of the reading is done in paper books and how much of the reading is done on digital media. And 3rd, some more test on actual reading speed instead of this reading ability that we compare to now. So that's the conclusion.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have questions, you're of course very welcome to ask them in the Q&A session, or ask them, or write them in the Slack channel. And of course, you're always welcome to write to us, and you can see our email addresses to the left. Thank you and bye.